Okay, so a motion to move forward with HH 2 through 5.
Move it.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baxter. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Motion for HH 1.
Move it.
Mr. DeForest.
Second.
Seconded by Grant Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Lattimore abstained. Carried. Thank you. Mr. Foley, Government Ops.
Mr. Chairman, Government Operations has 3 resolutions. They have passed through committee as well as Ways and Means. I present them to this body.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Mr. Pinkney, Planning?
Mr. Chairman, Planning has 2 resolutions before you. Both have been through both committees and seek approval.
Move it.
I'll offer as a bundle.
Move it.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Yes.
Just a quick question, can we do one while the public hearing is still open?
That was my,
No, you have to hold that.
okay, so we'll have to separate out one. We'll have to do, since there's only 2, have a motion for PL 2.
Move it.
Move. Seconded by Mr. Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. So we'll come back to PL 1 at the end. Mr. Baxter, Public Works.
Mr. Chairman, Public Works has 1 resolution that's been through committee. I offer it up for approval.
Move it.
Second.
And Mr. Bennett, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Judicial and Public Safety.
Mr. Chairman, we have 3 resolutions. They've been through both committees. I would offer them as a bundle.
Move it. Second.
All 3.
Mr. Didio. Mr. Baxter. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Again, at this time, I'll ask one last time if anybody has anything to offer for the public hearing. Not at this time, I'll close the public hearing and ask Mr. Pinckney to proceed with Planning 1.
I'd like to offer PL 1, has again been through committees, seeks for approval.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Okay, this time under other business, I would ask Andy to give a quick update on the administrative search. Mr. Dennison, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we started with 60?
More than 6.
More than 60 from all over the world, applicants. We narrowed it down to 10, then we narrowed it down to 5, which we're gonna present to the ledge to see who they choose. Our group was, as Mike put it earlier, we didn't always agree, but we agreed to disagree and get the job done. And I think we came up with 5 really good candidates. So,
Thank you. I, again, like to thank everybody that worked on that. 2 things that I would like to come out of this meeting from the legislature is they're presenting 5 candidates. And so some of the questions that the chairman needs in order to schedule meetings is if the group would like to interview 2 at a time, which would be 3 nights of interviews or meeting and talking, or if we would like to try to get 2 in one night and 3 in another night. And then the other area that we need to kind of give some direction to is timing as to when. I think next week is going to be a little bit too early because Mr. Russell has to get all these people to arrange for getting here and things. And so the question is, would we do them like at 5 o'clock before a committee meeting, or what times would work for people? Mr. Dennison?
We discussed in our meeting before this, the week of the 12th, 13th, and 14th, which is all 3 nights committees. But somebody brought up the point that I had forgot about, that's also NISAC.
Yeah.
So that can cause,
I'm sorry, it's night.
that's also NISAC that
Oh,
week.
yep.
So that can cause an issue for people to be able to be here for those nights.
We have 4 going, and 2 are only going on Thursday.
But, I mean, this is something where we really would like 100% participation from the legislature.
It's exactly why we want to discuss it here when
So-
everybody's here.
One of my question we discussed is the week before, would that be too soon? I guess that would be the question for you too, Mike. The week of Labor Day, but, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that of that week, if NISAC's gonna be an issue for the following week? Or is that too soon too?
It certainly is more time than we were thinking, because we were trying to think of trying to put in next week.
Yeah.
I think we could look to that week if that's the will of the legislature. From talking to the candidates, they are all very interested and will make themselves available. So,
So I guess as a body, we have to decide.
Yeah.
5th, 6th, and 7th, Annie?
I'm looking that up right now.
If those are nights without committee, then maybe you could do 3 in one night. I don't know what your opinion is. of
Tuesday
that.
would be the 5th, Wednesday the 6th, Thursday the 7th. I'm sure nobody wants to meet on a Friday night.
No.
Mr. Baxter?
Mr. Chairman, how about the 6th and the 7th, if we did 3 one day and 2 the other? That way, anybody coming back late from Labor Day vacation wouldn't be due to be here on Tuesday.
You were saying the 6th and the 7th.
I am.
Second.
The committee had concerns, and certainly we're just a counseling kind of committee, so we realize we have no control over it at this point, and that's fine. But one of the concerns was, I'm not sure if this is because of the meeting on the night of the committee meeting when we were originally talking about this, but, you know, can people keep their focus together for 3 candidates in one night? And, you know, if there's any doubt about that, it's really unfair to the last person standing. It's just something to think about.
Another question that I have is, could we even meet before 5 o'clock? And I can't answer for you folks. If we were to have a meeting at 4 or 4:30, is that too early for anyone in the group? Yeah. So the earliest time frame would be 5 o'clock? Okay. So if you start at 5 and we have a committee meeting at 6 or 6:30, my gut feeling is it gives you time enough for probably 2.
There's no committees.
No committees, no.
Oh, okay,
The first week, there'd be no committee.
okay. Anybody, so who wants to do 3 and 2 on the 6th and 7th? Show of hands.
Pretty much all of them. All of them.
Anybody want to do 3 nights of 5th, 6th, and 7th? No. Okay. So if I give the direction to the chair and to Mr. Russell to book things for the 6th and 7th after 5 o'clock, that's kind of what I'm hearing. Mr. Pinckney?
What are you looking at for time-wise, 35 to 40 minutes?
that's about right. With
Each candidate.
some kind of a break in between. You know, 15 minutes or something so people can readjust, and if there's interest in some discussion after and whatnot. But yeah, it was a half an hour. We're talking about a half an hour.
Good, yeah, that's fine. I think that's enough.
Mr. Dennis?
It was brought up during our search committee too. Those that are on it that aren't legislators, obviously will have no final say, but those folks, some would like to be able to be here to watch the final, you know, see it through to the end, sitting over there, whatever, wherever. But we obviously need this body to okay that, so I'd like to bring that forward to see if anyone has an issue with those people being able to see the final interviews. They will have no say, they'll sit quietly, whatever, but they just would like to see it through.
Mr. Pinckney?
I'd support that. They put in their voluntary time, and it'd only be honorable to let them be here.
Do you hear any other comments from the group? Mr. DeForest?
Fred, is there any, there's no legal issue with that?
There's no legal
Proceeding,
issue with that.
right? Okay, that's it then.
So is that something that everybody is, anybody opposed to that? Okay.
So we can tell them
We'll-
yes.
Pardon me?
We can tell them yes then.
We will proceed in that direction and figure out how we're going to handle that. Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, just one quick question on that. Now, will they have to sign a confidentiality agreement for that night?
We all did.
Yeah, but I went for that night, so it's not back to say, the legislator Dennison said this and such and such said this when it hits the street or so.
I'll leave that to our HR department.
We can certainly do that. I will check first, the confidentiality agreement that you have and one that we had signed by the committee members was designed by our legal team. So I will ask them, does that continue to hold in place? And if not, I will have them design me a non-disclosure form for that evening.
Because already part of this agreement, some of it's already been discussed on the floor as it is. Like the process and everything, some of the process applications, so, you know, you're trying to freeze us from saying anything, yet we're right here in the public saying it.
I guess when I first envisioned this process, I guess I was thinking, I'm not exactly opposed to it either, but I thought maybe it was just gonna be the legislature, and then perhaps we would open it up to the public when we get down, if there are maybe a series of finalists. You know, let's say we brought it down to a 3 or a 2, and I thought perhaps department heads, public would be able to come in and see, but I don't think we've fleshed out the rest of this process just yet, but, so, I'm ambivalent either way, it's fine. I kind of thought that the search committee could come and see it through at that point. So, but that's, like I said, I can go either way.
Mr. Foley?
Mr. Chairman, I have had, to what Joe said, I have had questions about the confidentiality agreement. There's certain parts in here that, for instance, I mean, Fred, this is a public document here, we can discuss this that we, in open session.
I haven't seen it yet, but sure.
Okay. So like number 1, it says each member of the committee / legislature shall keep strictly confidential all aspects of the processes, deliberations, and documents of the committee. I mean, I think that's good. From what I can ascertain from this document, we want to keep the identities secret of the candidates, of the 5 candidates that we have. But some of the language in here suggests that we can't describe any of what we may be going through during this process. And I'm not sure how we are able to communicate with the general public to give them updates. I mean, for instance, on number 2, and we have to sign this, it says the information which shall be kept confidential shall include but not limited to the identity of all persons interested in the position, the identities of all persons identified by the committee as candidates. I think that's fine. You know, you wanna protect them and their interests. The next line though says all deliberations of the committee / legislature regarding such candidates guess my point is that what can we actually say during this process? Is it absolutely nothing? I did send these questions to you. I know we've been kind of back and forth, and I wanted to talk with Mike as well, but
Well, the purpose of the confidentiality agreement is to protect both the legislature, the process, and the candidates, right? Because there are at least, if I hear right, 5 candidates. My understanding is the legislature is going to meet and interview those candidates. That process is a deliberative process in executive session between the legislators and whoever else you decide to invite in. So whatever occurs there, like any other executive session, stays within the executive session. So I think I'm missing your question, but
well, just, I mean, what are we allowed to say in public about this process in order to keep them informed?
about the process, we're talking about it now, so that's okay. But as far as what an individual candidate says, or as far as what the opinion of the body is, it's too early to say that. So that information stays within executive session. And Eileen had mentioned a possibility of maybe, and I'm making part of this up, the last 2 candidates being done in public. Haven't heard that that's been decided. That may be, what, the 3rd step? Am I sensing that? Or is this going to be the last step?
We'll get back to that. Ms. Norton?
I had some issues with this document as well. I totally understand that the candidates would like to be kept confidential. They have jobs they'd like to keep. Their employers may or may not know. I understand that. I had some issues in number 1 also. I simply blacked it out and figured I'd leave it up to our legal team whether or not I was allowed to know names. I'm not going to tell anybody the candidates' names. They'll know who gets it. That's really all the public, I think, needs to know at this point. As far as talking about the process, we've already talked about the process. The public wants to know what the process is. What are we doing? Was there 1 candidate? Was there 100 candidates? How did you narrow it down? I don't feel like any of that needs to be confidential myself. We're not revealing too much information. That's my opinion. Our legal team may have a different opinion. I'll leave it up to them. I blacked out what I wasn't comfortable with and signed it.
Mr. Dennis?
I guess my question to both Mike and Fred is, my update on this, I mean, did I break the confidence? I mean, how am I supposed to give, how am I supposed to give the update?
The sheriff's waiting for you.
I couldn't do it any other way.
No, you're
I mean, I wouldn't have known where we were at in the
There's
process.
no problem with that at all.
Okay.
Mr. Lattimore?
I felt the same way. I was like,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm not part of the process, even though I have done this before in other governmental bodies, but once, I mean, a real good background check is one thing. Another thing is the work ethic of the person and the accomplishments, maybe from their past history. I mean, like, on some of our hires, if we had picked the phone up and talked to a former, or a legislator that was on the previous person's employment, we would have found out a lot. So how do we
Let me
get?
just answer a couple of those things, Tim. You are part of the process, okay? Every one of us legislators are part of the process. Don't be saying that you're not part of the process.
Not up till now.
the-
So this has been.
The other thing is that a lot of this you'll be receiving this before we start meeting with these people, okay? It's not like you're gonna go into this thing blindfolded. We're trying to include everybody in the process and give everybody as much information as we can so we can make a good decision together, including all 15 of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here trying to figure out what time everybody can get to these meetings. So, back to the question Mr. Foley had.
You still didn't answer my question in regards to sometimes picking up the phone and talking to a former legislator as to how that person performed their duties. I mean, we can't have that reach? Or does anybody on this board have that reach?
If there are reference checks to be made, those will be done either, I think, by background check by either an outside agency, and if there are references to be checked, it would be one individual. For instance, Mr. Russell would take care of that, rather than have 15 people pick up the phone. It's much
Correct.
neater and cleaner to have it done by one person, then that person reports back to the legislature. What happened in the county once before is some legislators got ahead of the curve. During a interview process, they reached out to the employer. That caused the individual to be fired from his employment. We do not want that type of situation, so we need to be very cautious around individual legislators going off and making individual calls, because we do not want to be subject to a lawsuit in that type of situation.
I'm not suggesting that.
I understand, I'm just giving a caution to the body.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Fuller?
Did you have something for me? You started to. and you-
Yeah, there was one part of your question that we didn't answer yet, and I was trying to get back to it, but I'm old and do you remember what it was?
No.
Well, let me just say that maybe we need to have some, I mean, I want us to be able to use common sense, but there's legislators that have asked questions in here that regard to this document that they don't know what they can and can't say. And I guess, are we talking about specifically, anything specifically related to any of the candidates? Is that the scope of this? I mean, so.
Well, the scope is a little broader than that. I'm going to suggest that if there are questions, send them to me and I'll respond to the whole body as far as what, because I can't anticipate what all your questions are.
One of the things that I would say is that we don't even really have to sign this confidentiality thing. If we're talking about something in executive session, it should stay in executive session. If we're talking about the process, which we're doing now, it's not something for executive session. And the most important thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to protect the people that we're interviewing so that, for instance, what Fred said, somebody doesn't end up getting fired because they're interviewing with us. Mr. Bennett.
So what you're saying then, Mr. Chair, is if we don't sign this, then we still get a copy, we still get a look at the resumes? According to the way Mike Russell sent us out, if we don't sign this, we don't get a copy of the resumes beforehand?
I don't know. I'm not going to answer that right now. I'm just saying that if there's discussions in executive session, it's supposed to stay there.
Right, exactly, but according to the email that we were sent by HR, that if we didn't sign this, we were not
We will,
privy to the,
we'll have
So-
that all clarified before we start meeting.
well, we have these papers, either we're gonna sign them or not, you know?
You don't have to sign.
What
it.
what is the case, Mike?
If you have specific concerns about the document itself, okay, then send those to me, and I will have that clarified by council to what it is. I confirm what the chairman said, is that the idea is to protect the confidentiality of the candidate. And so that's why the thing was designed. And this was originally designed for the search committee and was modified to go back to the legislature. If you have a specific concern, I will check that out and check that out tomorrow so that we have an answer to it. The way that I presented this was I wanted a commitment from the legislators that they wouldn't share the names and the resumes of the individual candidates in advance of their opportunity to talk to them. And then, so that, because for just the reasons that have been explained here, that there are concerns that impact their current employment. So that's what the intention of this was to get a commitment that we wouldn't be sharing information about individual candidates until there was an opportunity to have the interviews, and then we would decide what's going forward. There has been conversation about if the process doesn't come up with a single candidate, then we might want to go to a third step, and that might include the public, in which case that would be open to them. So really, we're kind of walking through this through one step at a time. So I would ask if you have a specific question, or if you want me to check them to make sure, to council, to make sure that they can identify for you specific things that are referenced in this, I'll do that. And I'll do that rapidly, so you will have an opportunity to review the resumes.
Well, like I said, the one question I had, if we don't sign this, does that mean we do not get a copy of the resumes? That's what I want to know.
That, yes,
That's what I want to know.
the-
So,
It's not a question.
so your
of getting copies, it's
confidentiality statement down at the bottom of all your emails, that doesn't constitute, that should be just as good as this. When we open up, when we look at, there's a confidentiality statement in there from everybody. The intention of this email is to the specific person and only them. It's not to be shared with anybody and all that. That should be the same thing as this. If we send and say, Mike, we would like a copy of these resumes, we should be able to get it and shouldn't have to sign this. So you're, in essence, I'm looking at it as you're questioning the integrity of this body by not accepting the emails.
I don't think that's something for HR to be answering. I think
You
it's
know,
more of a legal question, and we either,
and then, you know, when do we get these back, when do we give them back and stuff, and when are we gonna have the next executive session where we're gonna talk about all the candidates?
probably at the next meeting that we schedule for the, to meet the candidates.
But I thought the whole purpose of this was to hand out, get the resumes out to everybody, so we all have a look at them before, so we'd have some questions ready. Not have to shoot from the
I can't
hip.
answer you, Joe. I haven't been involved in the process. I'm just trying to move the process along. Mr. Foley, or wait, excuse me, Mr. Dennison had his hand up, then we'll go to Mr. Foley.
Just two things. I mean, those of us on the committee, we sign that because we've spent the last 2 months going through this. I mean, there's been people who have said, well, you know, who do you have? Obviously, we couldn't tell anyone. That was the whole point of tonight, saying we've narrowed it down to 5. You know, everyone will have the opportunity, hopefully, one way or another, if we get this straightened out, to see their resumes and then have the opportunity for the 5 of them to come in front of them. So, now like Ryan, you know, I mean, if your constituents ask you, where are we on that? Tell them we've narrowed it down to 5 people and we're gonna interview them. I mean, they don't need to know anything. Do they need to know the 5 names? Do they need to know where they live, how many children they have? I mean, come on. We got 5 people, we're gonna interview them. Eventually, we're gonna have 1. I mean, we're not recreating the wheel here. And it seems like we're trying to and making it square. So, I feel like the last 2 months has been a waste of my time now.
Mr. Foley?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a question of what we are actually signing. And so far tonight, we have not really received answers. We've said, well, we'll look into it, or if you have questions, send them to Mike, he can answer. No, I have not heard answers to some of the questions that we have asked tonight, so much so that some people do not understand this document. Additionally, what Mike Russell has said through email is if we do not sign this document, and tonight, that the legislative person that doesn't sign this can't do their job in regards to trying to select a candidate, because we won't have access to the resumes. I mean, that's basically what it does. It restricts our ability to do our job up here if we don't sign this document, is what I've heard tonight. And that's maybe where there is an issue here.
Mr. DeForest?
I'd just like to go on record that by signing any of these documents, I don't feel that my integrity is impugned or that anything is, you know, that somebody's trying to imply that I'm not honorable or whatever. And I certainly hope that is the feeling of the other legislators that served on this working committee. And I would hope that it would be the same feeling by the rest of the body.
Mr. Baxter?
Mr. Chairman, I already signed my document. I don't care what it has in it. I'd like to get my resume so I can start doing my process.
You're in.
I think anytime you're gonna hire somebody, it's not up for public discussion. You don't talk about it down at Denny's or at the local pub.